All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Talk Openly. My name is Jack. I'm here with my wonderful Sangha friend, Daniel. Hey, Daniel.
Hi, Jack. Nice to see you. Good to be here with you. It feels like we were just here.
We were. It,
Yeah,
it, it just went by in a flash. Yeah.
it did truly. Like it felt like it was yesterday.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and we're going to be talking tonight. We're continuing our series on the six realms, and tonight we're moving on to the Ashura realm. Which I feel like I have some recent familiarity with.
Oh, me too, Jack. Me too.
Well, good. We're gonna have a lot to talk about tonight. And we'll get there in the second half of our show. But yeah, how are you doing today, Daniel? What's going on with you? What's happening in your practice? All the things.
I'm doing well. Yeah, practice is going well. Life in general is going well. It's interesting. So summertime brings with it for me a decent disruption to my schedule, my routine. And I find it fascinating. I think I'm like an easygoing, go with the flow, flexible kind of guy. But disrupt my routine, and all of a sudden, this little self that I know so well gets all discombobulated,
Yeah,
right? And like kind of stressed out and anxious for no good reason at all, other than that, it's not the same old routine.
yeah.
And so I find that part really fascinating, like where I'm just like, who am I without my routine?
I know it, right? Yeah.
Like what during the sort of like the winter months, like fall, winter, spring, I've got like, I got when I wake up, I got where I'm when I'm going to the gym, I've got, when I'm doing my meditation, well, all this stuff. Summertime, everything's a little bit like messier and more free flow. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's all actually totally groovy, but
Yeah.
at the same time, there's like I get a little grumpy with it.
For sure. No, I feel that. And yeah, it's funny what you said about we can think of ourselves in some way, have this narrative about like, oh yeah, I'm this kind of like just fun-loving,
Yeah.
spontaneous person, but it
Yeah.
turns out like when we get rubbed that wrong way, it's like, oh, actually, not really.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I was just talking to another Sangha friend just right before the show.
Yeah.
And I was talking about an experience that I had where within the Sangha that was very much like the rock tumbler stuff that we were talking about a couple of months ago,
Yeah.
where some parts of me got exposed that I wasn't even aware of. So I discovered, get this, I discovered that I have like a decent amount of like passive aggressiveness,
Oh,
passive aggressive tendencies. Not because anybody told me this. This is not like somebody said, "Oh, Daniel, you're this." No, no, no. Literally, through some interactions, I was like dwelling on it. I was sort of like irritated, bothered. So I was like really like sitting with it. And I'm like, what is going on here? And I noticed myself, like what was going on, like what I was doing. And I was like, oh, geez, like look at that. That's passive aggressiveness. And also, this is not unfamiliar, which means that it's like a trait, a characteristic that's been here all along that I didn't incorporate into my own concept of self, right? Like
yeah.
like just
Yeah.
just like the free flowing, easygoing, whatever, right? Like no, I'm not fixed.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not one particular thing, you know. It sort of reminds me like one time long time ago in my early 20s, I was seeing a therapist, and at one point he goes, Daniel, sometimes you're a real asshole.
Oh, shit.
My therapist said this to me. And
That's incredible.
and then he was like, yeah,
Wow.
yeah, you're a full spectrum being. So
You're a real human.
you're a
Yeah,
real human. You have that characteristic as well, right?
right.
Own it. It's okay, right?
Yeah, and when as you were speaking, I was thinking about this tendency that we have to minimize or maximize certain qualities that are maybe more kind of familiar to
Hmm.
ourselves. And so, we want to minimize the ones that we feel kind of icky about. but they're still there. And on the flip side too, there's those of us like myself, I tend to maximize my negative qualities. Like think I over identify with them and think like, oh, I'm a bad person, which is also a form of self-centeredness, right?
Right.
So that kind of minimizing and maximizing certain parts of our really it's not, I don't know, personality, yeah, behavior. Um, it's all this false sense of self, all of
That's
it.
right. That's right. Exactly. And we've talked about it before that even though it can be uncomfortable and unpleasant to see aspects that we don't normally use as our own self-definition, um, it's also fun. Like there's
Yeah.
a kind of a fun, like, aha, I caught it. You know, this elusive, whatever, passive aggressive guy, right? Like he's been there all along and I never even saw him, but I caught him. You know,
Yeah.
like, wow, look at that. I got him.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I like that aspect of it. But yeah, besides noticing those kinds of things, I've had fun in my meditation practice applying something that I learned in meditation with our teacher, Lama Yeshe Jinpa. He was talking the other day during a meditation practice about um, training towards something that we already know. And what he was talking about was about in our meditation practice, training to inviting in these experiences, if you will, or these mm, yeah, I guess you could call them experiential states that we've already had before, right?
Mhm.
And I found that really interesting, like um and so I've been applying that in my daily meditation, and I find it really, really helpful to sort of like reflect back to, like, let's say that I'm, doing shamatha, calm abiding, and to reflect back to, experiences that I've had either in meditation or not that sort of embodied that characteristic or that quality. And then to
And
notice.
are those like, experiences of feeling strong compassion and love and joy, those kinds of
No, 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 that sounds nice, but no. It's actually more of a, though I think some of those traits are there, some of those qualities are there. But primarily what I've been, this is fairly recent, so I don't have a lot of practice with this yet, but mainly this sort of feeling of emptiness or experience of emptiness. So I had an experience not that long ago in meditation where really, like, oh my God, just like true, like just wide open. Everything is just there, right? And there wasn't like a super strong identity or internal external dualism going on. And I really like that. It struck me, right? That little experience, that little pinprick it felt important to me. And so in my daily sit, I sort of invite that back, not trying to like force anything. Don't get me wrong, right? It really
Mhm.
is just sort of like, sort of evoking it, right? Like you're
Yeah.
welcome. Come on back, right? It was already here once. Let's see it. And there's no forcing, nothing like that. But it's interesting how that invitation to train towards something that we already know, how helpful it was. So
Hmm.
that's been something that I've been trying to work with in my meditation, and I find it to be um, pretty effective.
That's very cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Well, and that's, when we have those experiences, that, stay within kind of the realm of experience versus like strong realization. I think that's, maybe uh, like the ongoing kind of positive, uh, aspect of those experiences is that they are motivating, they're inspiring. Like we can remind ourselves like, gosh, remember when I was able to just sit there and really truly be there?
Right.
That was awesome. And, and that exists. How cool that that exists. And I can come back to it. And, if it doesn't happen this sit, okay. If it happens the next one, cool,
Well, yeah, yeah, I love it. The way that I sort of imagine it is that, so oftentimes in the past I've thought, well, if the causes and conditions are sufficient, then whatever a particular state will arise. Yes, yeah, it's true. It seems like, but if it has already arisen, if the pinprick is already there, right? Like
Ah,
then I can intentionally bring my attention back to that little pinprick, right?
yeah,
And sort of like look through it, right? So yeah, that's kind of what it's like.
that's really cool.
Yeah, yeah, I dig it. Dig it.
Nice.
So that's what's going on with me. What about you?
Yeah, so I'm in full swing at my new job, which has just been awesome. I think my the my karma has ripened in a really positive way right now, in terms of my livelihood and really being able to do bodhisattva activity, pretty much all day for my job. And for those who don't know, I'm providing short-term therapy within a primary care clinic setting. So I love it. It's fantastic. And yeah, I just feel like it's been so good for my mind. Um, and sitting, of course, I'm a I won't say I am a distracted being, but I am a being who experiences a lot of distraction. And that's just what I work with, it's okay. And so a lot of my training in the last few weeks is I'm working towards a little more acceptance of those states, and just feeling them out, um, and also reading this book, Mind at Ease, which I've read before.
Can you lift
And
it up a little bit
oh,
more?
sorry, yeah, I
There you
don't
go.
have my self view on.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, Mind at Ease, which is Traleg Kyabgyon Rinpoche. And he often comes up when we're doing the Lojong slogan random generator. So we might see him later tonight. But this book's really incredible. And so I work with some of the meditations in here because he provides kind of like different exercises that you can do. And all of them start with contemplating the four thoughts that turn the mind to Dharma. And so, thinking about your precious human life, impermanence, karma, and so on. And then also contemplating the four perfections. Um, uh, is it the four perfections that he has you contemplate these same things each time? And something about that repetition is just really
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah.
Um, and it's that kind of familiarizing ourselves with the Dharma that I think is so important. Yeah, the four preliminaries and, excuse me, the four immeasurables.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah, so may all sentient beings have happiness and so on. Um, so it sets the stage for my mind to kind of be in that, you know, the ideal state for meditation is okay, I'm doing this for the benefit of all beings. And that's really setting the stage for that. And
Most important. Very important.
yeah, yeah. So I've been liking that it's kind of like you do this little prep work that's very familiar each time. And then it's a different kind of exercise that you do. So yeah, it's been really interesting.
That's awesome. Can I ask you a question about that
Yeah.
setting intention? Um, do you ever, so you're like, okay, I'm gonna meditate now, and you're like, whatever, you sit down, and then you reflect on this, right? And you are like, oh, okay, well, before I even get started, this is my intention. Do you ever sort of notice that that sort of wasn't your intention when you sat down? Like yeah, at least for me, I noticed that what happens is like I always ask myself, right, before I do anything else, like what what truly is my intention here? And I'll stop for a second. I'll be like, it's like I want to be better. I want to self-improve. I ought to do. There's some kind of, it's not quite, my intentions aren't entirely pure. But then when I think about it, like, no, actually, I truly am actually wanting to practice in order to benefit all beings, including myself, right?
Yeah.
But all beings. I noticed how sort of like my needle, like where it's pointing, like it was pointing sort of like northwest, right? And then it goes ding north.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
You ever
That's
noticed anything like that?
oh sure, yeah, definitely. And I think all of those motivations can exist at the same time because in fact they do. They just do,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know? Like there's the kind of self-serving motivation where for me how it shows up is that I'm like, "Oh, I just want to relax. I just want to be able to relax."
Yep. Yep.
Which of course sometimes has the opposite effect. I'm like,
Yeah.
just relax, you know.
I just need to
Um,
clear my mind. Oh my God, all I see is mud.
right, right. So yeah, that is there, but then yeah, I can't discount that there is a very genuine motivation there as well.
Yeah.
That I really, really do want to do this and that I really care about other sentient beings.
Yeah.
And I think uh our teacher and other teachers have said that we really need to marinate our minds in our own goodness. And so, sometimes just to remind myself, like, wow, you showed up again to do this, to work towards this goal. That's really amazing. Like, I'm glad that I'm here. Um,
Right.
Coming from that really positive perspective, I think it encourages me. So I want to work on that one a little bit more too.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's important. I think it's, what you were saying earlier about your work, that you're very fortunate that you get to engage in these sort of bodhisattva activities as in your career, and how the benefit you said, like it's really good. I think the way that you said this was it's really good for my mind, right? But
Yeah.
and I found that really kind of interesting because I was thinking like, wow, those are some lucky people, right? That and yet that sort of gets to what we're talking about here is that yeah, it's for us and them. It's for all of us.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, when we are able to do, provide some kindness and compassion, not only does that serve them, we're also, accumulating positive merit, and so it's it just builds on itself. And speaking of that, I know last week I shared that for Lama's birthday, my gift to him was that, I was going to commit to saying hi and like being open to conversation to
Yeah.
a stranger or like a far acquaintance, every day. Uh, which is actually for me, it's a sacrifice. Um, and it's been fantastic. It's been
Oh my
so
gosh.
great. Yeah. And I don't notice it all the time, but uh once I do realize like, oh yeah, yeah, remember to say hi, right? Remember to say hi. I just notice my warmth expands.
Yeah.
It's like I start to notice people. Whereas on my kind of everyday, when I'm just kind of in my routine, my habit patterns,
Yeah.
I'm not noticing other beings. I'm
Right.
really like narrowed into my own head. And so it's about expanding out, which has been just so great.
Oh, I love hearing that. I can't help but think about the way that sort of our misconceived, misperceived notions of self, how they really are these really tightly wound up sort of fixations and awareness, right? And
Mm.
that when we do our training, like the kind that you're talking about, and we begin to unwind a little bit, that unwinding, like by deliberately changing the focus from this intense tightly wound self and put it out, right, like go the exact opposite, that when we do that there's this ah feeling, right,
Yeah,
spacious, warm, friendly, loving, creative, right, like that's an
yeah,
ex oh I love that, and I love hearing about how that's working for you.
yeah, yeah. It really
Um,
does work. This stuff works, as Mama likes to say. Oh man, and talking about our teachers, we've been having uh, wonderful teachings um, on Sundays. I think maybe there was a Sunday skipped somewhere in there on Arya Deva's 400 verses.
Yeah.
And that's been really interesting. Have you been there in person?
Yeah, for Kenshin Rinpoche has been teaching on
Right.
that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh yeah, the topic that he's talking about is fine and dandy. I went and was checking out the root text and really enjoying it, but
me
I have
too.
to say that in this particular case, I really like the teacher. He's like his the way that he I don't know, he's so real, so
Yeah.
genuine, and so just like direct
Yes.
about the realities of it all, right? And he
Yeah.
doesn't say like you guys are like this. He's just like this is how it is, and me,
Yeah.
you, all of us. I
For
love
sure.
it. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
had an go ahead.
I was just gonna say he's both blunt and also just so incredibly kind.
Oh, very much so. Yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah.
that's gorgeous. I love it. I
Yeah.
was fortunate enough. We had a little like a potluck lunch after Sunday's teaching, and I had this sort of like burning question that I couldn't get formulated in time for for the actual teaching at the end of for the Q&A. And I just sat down next to him and I was eating my lunch, and so I was like, "Hey, how about this?" And he was so sweet and answered my question so well. Like I thoroughly understood what he was saying, and he clearly answered my question. I was just like, nice. Very, very fortunate.
We have good teachers
Yeah, we
coming
do.
and we have such a great our teacher. We're very fortunate.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Kenshin Rinpoche is teaching all weekend long this
that's awesome.
coming weekend on Saturday and on Sunday. And
Yeah.
then I believe the following weekend as well.
Please join. Yeah, if you're new to Temple, if you're old to Temple, you're welcome to join. I think they're both, yeah, so you're saying both in person and online, right?
Yeah, both in person and online. And I'm really hoping that Saturdays in particular is recorded because I'm not going to be here this weekend.
Yeah.
And I desperately need to hear Saturday's talk, which is all about building a daily tantric practice,
All
the
right.
do's and don'ts.
Hmm.
And I want to hear it straight from the
I want to hear
horse's
it
mouth.
too.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, I look forward to it. It's going to be great. And folks, please join if you can. All right. Well, how about some Lojong, yeah?
Yeah, let's do
Let's
some
do it.
Lojong. Okay.
So Lions Roar Dharma Center's website has this incredible random Lojong slogan generator. Um, and Lojong slogans are these pithy instructions that help us along the path. And as far as we know, this is the only random Lojong slogan generator in the universe, at least in English.
Well, within the human realm.
Within the humor, there you go. Yeah.
And it has this beautiful little orange button that when you push it, you just get a random Lojong slogan. Lojong means mind training.
Mind training.
Mind training
Nice.
slogan.
All right. Number 21.
Oops.
Always have the support of a joyful mind. I love it. So from Choyam Trungpa, he writes, the point of this slogan is continuously to maintain joyful satisfaction. That means that every mishap is good because it is encouragement for you to practice the Dharma. Other people's mishaps are good also. You should share them and bring them into yourself as the continuity of their practice or discipline. So you should include that also. It is very nice to feel that way, actually. How sweet.
Yeah. Yeah.
So always have the support of a joyful mind. What does this mean for you, Daniel?
I feel like it's actually very similar to what I was talking about earlier about discovering. So if you're doing the mind training, cultivating mindfulness and watching yourself and others, as Chogyam Trungpa says here, and you're seeing it all unfold, there are these sort of these aha moments And so we, like there's the little pinpricks of little mini realizations or whatever you want to call them. And those are naturally joyful. Those are like naturally sort of attractive, if you will. But then there are these moments where you see, for example, that you're sort of a passive aggressive jerk sometimes, right? Or something like that. And that's also joyful, right? It's okay, I think, to sometimes you don't have the support of a joyful mind. But if you're cultivating mindfulness, you recognize that you do not have a joyful mind, right?
Mm.
And like at some given time, you're like, whatever. You're all sort of like self-absorbed, wound tightly, all about me. Like something's not okay. And then you have, because you're seeing something, and you're like unhappy about having seen this thing, because gosh darn it, now it probably means, oh, it's an opportunity to change your ways and not be that or whatever, right? And there's some reason why there's like resistance or negativity around it, and that's not joyful. And then you recognize, you're like, oh, I'm unhappy. I see that this is I don't have this support. And then you begin to realize like, oh no, this is good. This
Mm.
thing that's happening is not a bad thing. Right? It's yeah, sure, maybe like the light is shining on something that needs to be corrected. That's not a bad thing because that's an opportunity for correction, and that's what we want, isn't it? It's sort of like the whole thing, like people avoiding going to the doctor, right?
Totally.
Right? Because they don't want to know. They just like it's better if I don't know, then it's okay. But actually, if a doctor or someone tells you like, "Hey, look, you've got a problem over here," and you can correct it, you can fix
Yeah,
it. That's a good thing.
that is
We
a good thing.
Yeah, those are good
Yeah,
opportunities. We shouldn't resist that. And I think that having a joyful mind is like related to that sort of way of approaching all of this.
yeah, for
What do you
sure.
think it means?
Yeah, no, I echo all of that. And yeah, I think there's times as my practice deepens, I'm discovering that states of mind, I don't have to forcefully try and run away from them, if that makes sense. Like, can I have a joyful mind when I'm also feeling states of mind that on their
Mm,
surface don't feel joyful,
right,
like,
right.
can I recognize in sadness or fear or anger that like, oh, this in itself is something to observe, with that mind that you were talking about, that just kind of joyful awareness. And I can't say I've been extremely successful, but I can see it, I can see how it's possible.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's really exciting. I think that's part of having a joyful mind too, is like reminding ourselves that we have just this incredible, powerful potential within each of us,
Right.
and so whether I'm there yet or not, I can see that it's possible. And that brings joy itself.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think joy is also part of diligence too, like
Right.
having
Joyful effort.
right, joyful effort. They're paired together because I think sometimes we think of effort as being, just arduous. But if we can be joyful in our effort, then man, it's that whole thing of like, if you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life. So we're working on that it's like, oh, we can't wait. We're so excited when someone says that they need help, because then
Yeah.
it's like an opportunity, right, to come in and support and do bodhisattva activities. So yeah.
Yeah.
Look at this though. Look at this statue. This is incredible. Can you tell us what it is?
Yeah. So there's an image of the Bodhisattva of compassion, Avalokiteshvara. Um,
Um,
yeah, it's a neat little statue. It's not a form of Avalokiteshvara I'm used to seeing.
yeah, me neither. That's beautiful. Well, actually, I think I've seen Avalokiteshvara with the lotus and
Yeah, right here.
um,
Yeah.
yeah,
I just mean like that, like, yeah, it's not, I'm used to like the Tonka paintings, so the little
yeah.
statues.
And this
Mhm.
one's standing too, which is kind of unusual. I'm gonna, well, maybe I'll show you later. I have a postcard with a standing Avalokiteshvara. Um, but yeah, he's also the 100-armed Chinrezig standing. It's pretty awesome. But yeah, another time.
Okay, yeah, yeah, no problem.
Well, Daniel, this is we're already I feel like I could talk to you for hours and we're already halfway through. So that means we're ready to talk about the Asuras, these
Well, yeah, I feel like that,
yeah.
I feel like what Chugam Trungpa was saying there
Hmm.
is kind of related to what we're going to be talking about with the Asuras, in the sense that so he says that every mishap is good, and then he says other people's mishaps are good also. And I can't help when I didn't know a lot about the Asura realm. And so when I was reading about it, I was like, oh my God, I know so many Asuras.
Yeah.
I've been dealing with the like work related stuff, like where I'm like having issues with clients and stuff where I'm like, oh, that this all makes so much more sense now. I get it.
Yeah.
And then what's interesting is I can reflect on it. I can see like, oh, I can see how these situations arose for them and why they feel the way they do. And that's helpful to me because then I can avoid replicating those mistakes for myself.
You can also have some compassion, I imagine, for
Oh,
even though it's difficult,
yeah,
but
yeah. There's that too. It's a little harder, but
it
no,
is hard.
it's true.
Yeah, so the Azure realm are these uh are filled with these beings that, from what I heard, in their past life they were in the God realm, so they got to have every pleasure imaginable. They didn't have to worry about a thing in terms of everyday existence. And so, we'll be talking about the God realm next week, but their downfall is like extremely quick. And so they're in this state of pure pleasure, and then their karma runs out, and they're very quickly dropped into these lower states of existence. And so
You're talking about the gods.
yeah.
Yeah.
So imagine extremely terrifying, horrifying. And it sounds like these demigod Asuras that they are those beings who had to drop down from a higher state of existence. And so their whole mind state is just completely possessed by jealousy. And like insincerity was one that was very interesting to me. And this kind of like always like, propping oneself up is like
Mhm.
this just kind of boastful state of mind. So
They're paranoid
paranoid,
and
yeah.
and the phrase that stood out to me that I had to investigate a little bit was they are marked by defensive pride.
Ooh, ooh, I know that one a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, me too.
Yeah, so kind of a miserable state of existence,
But
right?
wait a second, Jack. Hang on, hang on. Okay, so there's six realms. This is one of the three higher ones.
I know. It
Uh,
doesn't sound very great though, does it?
Well, but they do have. I mean, so it sounds like the jealousy and paranoia and all of that is unfortunate, but they do have higher levels of pleasure
And power.
and power than the
Yeah,
human realm,
yeah,
right? They
yeah,
are demigods. They have power and they're intelligent, right?
right.
Like
Oh, they're
super.
cunning.
Yeah, and
They're
and, and
totally
I
cunning.
I was reading like they are marked by extreme intelligence and efficiency.
Yeah. It almost sounds like the kind of like a being, like a being that embodies like fascism or something, where it's like this intense power and like obsession with power and attainment and like the master race kind of stuff.
Yeah,
It sounds
yeah.
like that kind of mindset, which is Yeah, sure, there's power, but it's also horrific.
Make
Yeah.
the Deva realm great again.
Oh gosh. No. But you're right. I mean, that's the kind of we see it. We're seeing a lot of Deva and Ashura energy in our world these days, aren't
That's
we?
interesting that you made that connection. I was reflecting on it and I thought like, oh, how would I, like where would I draw these similarities? And I had a few thoughts, but none of them really resonated. But when you said that, I was like, oh yeah, you nailed it.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Well, what was the words that you said? You said marked by this kind of like efficiency, both combination of intelligence and efficiency.
Yeah.
When you like try and like um I don't know, when you try and make the world efficient, that means there's going to be a lot of suffering in the
Oh
way
yeah. Oh
trying to
yeah.
do that. Yeah. So
Yeah.
very interesting, scary realm for me. But I also feel like I've got some experience with this realm.
Not only that, but I guess what was interesting to me is that I didn't know a lot about this realm. But those very characteristics that are embodied that we just discussed are the way in which a human, for example, might get reborn as an Asura, right? Ashura, is it
Mhm.
Ashura? Asura.
Sure.
Anyway,
Yeah.
Ashura. Okay. Anyway, and so, like there's this sort of it's like they weren't necessarily bad. Like if they came from the human realm, they weren't necessarily like bad people, right? I read the stories of a number of these Asuras, and what they were in previous lives. And in many cases, they were basically like they were superficially good, or what was
Yeah.
like considered the lowest form of good. So like they like yeah, they like if you were to meet one of them as a human being, they would probably be pious. They'd probably follow form, conventional forms, and be polite. And you know what I mean? Like there would be these sort of ways in which they behave that had like an okayness, like like they're decent people or whatever. But that underneath it, these traits, this jealousy and this covetousness, right? This
Yeah.
paranoia. You know what the phrase that came to my mind again and again and again when I was thinking about them was they're the epitome of the players of a zero sum game, right?
No, yeah.
Like
Hmm.
somebody's gonna have to win, everybody's gonna have to lose in order for me to win, sort of thing. That kind of thinking.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's interesting. And I also I learned a lot more about this realm in the last few days, and that was interesting to me when I read about how the humans who get born in the Deva realm um, may have been like a priest or a monk, or a lay practitioner who like it says here. I was reading this text from the Zen Studies podcast, and they described that these people, while doing their kind of devotional practices, are still secretly harboring resentment and jealousy, and so that's just such like a
Yeah.
warning for me, I think, because I do think that I'm someone who really cares about reputation, and I can see how like, those of us who maybe get into spiritual practice without really looking at like our motivations, right? Might be doing it because we want to have a good reputation. and and so underneath all of that is like some envy, some all of this desire for some kind of like social power,
Yeah.
and so I think it's a really good warning for me as someone who thinks a lot about reputation and praise and all of that.
There's this other sort of component to their story that I think is quite symbolic. That's about about how they fell from the or got kicked out of the Deva realms, right? And so like essentially they had something that was really, 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 really good, and they were attached to it. And then their condition changed, and they no longer had access to that thing, right? Things were impermanent for them, and their situation was different, and they were no longer didn't have those things that they were so attached to. And as a result of their attachment to all of the pleasures of the Deva realm, they are now causing a tremendous amount of negative karma through their violence, right? And through
Yeah.
their aggression, trying to get it back, you know?
Mm.
And I think that that's something that's, that's also cautionary in the sense that like we can sort of reflect on that. Like I know, like if you ever had something that you thought was good and then you lost it, you can see how there can be this incredible aggression towards wanting to get it back. If I only had that back.
Yeah.
Like we see that, like people that like in abusive relationships, right? Where, finally one, the abused leaves the abuser, say, and then the abuser is like, no, I have to have that. That was the best, person I ever could have had in my life. And now, I'm willing to commit all kinds of acts of violence in order to get them back, even against
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's that where, where attachment and greed just
Yeah.
totally consume the mind. Um, yeah, I think in the Chinrezi sadhana that I do every once in a while, in describing the Deva realm, it says that, the way that they got there was through greed. Um,
The Deva realm?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And so I think there's, a couple different
Yeah.
ways to look
Yeah.
at the all the realms. And
Oh
so
yeah.
maybe that's the word that, that this author chose. And so then when I'm doing my practice and thinking about those beings, I'm also thinking about, okay, where are there places in my life, that I'm really driven by greed. And uh, because it's not just about doing the practice for those beings that have gotten there, but it's also like, okay, well, how am I embodying greed? How am I embodying aggression and
Yeah.
attachment? So um, we got to do both. I
The other thing about the Asuras that I thought was interesting in their story, there's all kinds of fun stories about them, right?
Mhm.
Um, but one of the things that was interesting is that even though they're sort of boisterous and they got all this bravado and they're like, I'm the best and I'm tough and I can do anything and I'm so smart and all of that, they're kind of wussies. Like at the end of the day, what happens is they get blinded by their jealousy and by their paranoia and so they have this sort of fearful thing going on. There's this beautiful story where or maybe it's not beautiful, but it's a fun story where they're at war, right? This is like right after so what happens, they get drunk, right? They're welcoming new gods into the heaven realms. Then so this is Sakra is the new god, and he's got all his people coming with him into the heaven realms. And these other devas who become the Asuras, they're welcoming Sakra into the heaven realm. And they're like, hey, let's drink. And they had this like super potent alcohol, and they started drinking it, but Sakura was like,
Mm,
my crew is not drinking. And so so what happens is these people that became the Asuras, or these devas that became the Asuras, they get wicked drunk, and then Sakura's like, I don't want these folks in my heaven. So
mm,
he kicks them out. And then as they're like falling down this giant mountain, they sober up a little bit. They're like, no, oh God, no, 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 no.
Man.
This is no good. And so then they start warring right away. They start climbing right back up the mountain. They're gonna get back in there. They're gonna fight their way back in. And they
Yeah.
almost do it. They almost get there, right? And then their Sakura comes out in his chariot and he's like they're about to, like he's getting closer, but then Sakura, he sees that his chariot is harming these bird-like beings, these Garuda birds on the
Yeah.
mountain. He's like, "Oh gosh, like they're screaming out because my chariot is like blowing past them and is harming them." So anyway, he turns around like he had been like fleeing back to heaven. He turns back around towards these Asuras. The Asuras, because they're so paranoid and they're worried, and they then think, oh gosh, he must have like a whole giant army, and in terror, they turn their backs and flee. In fact, if they had just stuck with it, they would have won.
Wow.
But my point in bringing up this story is, first, I like the story, and but then also that even though they're incredibly intelligent, they have that paranoid, fearful, sort of jealous aspect of their character leaves this
Yeah,
massive blind spot.
totally. Yeah, isn't that so interesting? Our insecurities, when we allow them to just totally consume our minds, yeah, we're gonna do stuff that's just not based in reality.
They create our own reality, and then we act
Yeah.
as if it's real. That's the experience that I've been having. I have two different clients
Mm.
that where I genuinely, me, my company, were trying to help them to the best of our ability, like really truly trying to help them and guide them in the right direction. And in both cases, there's this extreme like distrust where
Wow.
they literally cannot trust that we are acting in their best interest.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then because of that, their suspicion, even though they've been with us a long time, we've helped them in all kinds of ways, it doesn't really matter. They're like, nope, I can't believe that this is, actually happening. And then they react based upon that. And it just causes so much more trouble. I'm like, how the heck are you supposed to deal with Ashura-like beings? you know
Yeah,
and I think that using them as practice objects is a good it's a good first start, right?
for sure.
What's
Well,
the
and
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I also heard that in working with Ashura-minded beings, it's good to kind of use their language
Yes,
and
yes.
use kind of like their perspective. So, in their striving for power and, um, you know, yeah, just all the things that they're, envious of. Um, you remind them of like, well, here's actually how you become powerful is that steep your mind in compassionate activity. Because when you really look at, your actions, what actually brings you good things in your life versus what brings you pain and suffering. And so when we're able to look at karma, we can see like, oh yeah, it is when we take care of others, when we support others, that we also have everything that we need.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of working a little bit with their mindset, which I imagine that's for a lot of beings that works well.
Yeah, I think that that's one for a lot of people, we assume that other people, share our particular outlook, way of thinking, belief systems, whatever they are, no matter how obviously false that is. It's an
Yeah,
assumption that a lot of people have, and I think that what happens is, like an Asura like person would, assume that other people are like them, that they are also playing a zero-sum game, and that they're
right,
also out to, screw everybody and take as much as they can, and that greed
right,
is the dominant force in their life. And so when they meet somebody that that isn't like that, they're like
yeah,
they distrust it, right? And so
right.
and then there's this aggressiveness, right, on their end, that then triggers reactions in other people's that prove their point.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I know it is uh that is such a scary state of mind where it's like, oh, everyone's actually out to get me. No one's acting in good faith. you
Right.
know, and so that means that I can't act in good faith because people are going to take advantage of me. And I've totally felt that way. Yeah, I still occasionally, but I used to have some pretty bad paranoia with like coworkers and roommates and
Yeah.
stuff, where it'd be like every little thing that was either like out of place or maybe tone of voice wasn't kind
Yeah.
of quite right. I
Yeah.
would be oh, they're fucking with me, you know, like
Yeah.
that kind of like mindset. And I'm so glad that it's not as bad anymore, but I definitely see it pop up. You know, especially with like lots of transition right now that I'm going through.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's been several moments that I felt a little bit like, oh, my roommate's just like they don't even care, right? They don't even care about how the house is set up or, you know, like things like that, which
Yeah.
is totally not true. But like,
But
I noticed
it could be true.
see, that's the assure of mind is that like, you gotta, yeah, gotta protect yourself at all costs. And yeah. Um, but so I noticed that when my mind was a little bit vulnerable when we were moving and so my guards were down a little bit. And so my Ashura tendencies were, were a little bit out in the open, which was good to see. It was like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, that's still there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Shine a light on it, make friends with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to have enemies everywhere, you know?
Mm-mm.
Like I want to have I want to see all beings as, you know, as friends. And, you know, maybe if you can't be close to them in this certain life, but still think fondly of them, you know,
Yeah.
that's important.
I really I also saw that the article, the Zen Studies podcast article that you were referencing earlier. Really good one, actually. Anybody who's
Hmm.
interested in this, take a look at it. Um, there were 2 points that the author made there that I really enjoyed. One was, you know, basically the way out of this. How do you counter these tendencies? And then also like what happens as a result of that. So on the one hand, can I just read what it says? Maybe it's just
Sure.
easier.
Yeah.
And it says, our salvation comes when we turn our attention to those things in our experience that cannot be said to be attained, such as generosity, compassion, benevolence, and acceptance, or like the six transcendent perfections, right?
Mhm.
We realize that such things are never limited in quantity and can never be taken from us. And this is I love this. We taste the joy of profound acceptance and gratitude. We begin to act as if the universe were actually rich and benevolent, as through trust and a cessation of our efforts at self-preservation, our experience is transformed. I love that. It was so well said, right? Like we wake up to the fact that, oh, it isn't the way that I thought it was, right?
Yeah.
It's not there. Everybody can, like we can all benefit. Right? And I
Right.
can enjoy these. It's such a sad thing that the Asuras have access to all these wonderful resources, but they have no way of enjoying them. There's no
Yeah.
satisfaction, right? They always need more, more, more. They just can't get any satisfaction. And yet, if they changed their ways a little bit, right, and moved in this direction, that they would recognize a whole tremendous amount of wealth and deep satisfaction, exactly the thing that they wish for.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that turning away from bitterness, that just bitterness that takes over the heart when we're so, you know, consumed by wanting what we think other people have, you know, which is like, well, they're also miserable too. You know, and so yeah, that turning away from the bitterness of attachment to this life alone and attachment to, you know, this sense of self that's not even real, and turning towards that sweetness of like, oh yeah, we're all in this same boat together, and we have, yes, just such immense capacity, like we were talking about earlier, that capacity for compassion and love and joy, and equanimity. And when we can, you know, get a even the littlest taste of it, it's just so satisfying.
Right.
And that's when it's really like, oh, that's what's real. You know, like that's what's genuine happiness.
Yeah,
So yeah, there's such a sweetness to that.
there is. Well, may all of the Asuras taste that sweetness at some point and be
Yeah,
liberated.
hell yeah.
Mm.
But it's been good.
There's this
Mm-hmm.
funny little story about the Asuras and the Devas. They're
Uh-huh.
how they're related. So so it turns out that one of the Devas, his one of his favorite wife from a previous incarnation, she was a bit of a, yeah, maybe not a troublemaker, but she was reborn in the Asura realm, right? And he was born in the Deva realm. But he was his favorite wife, and he was like he so badly wanted to be with her, and she was about to be married. She was choosing her suitors or whatever, however that goes in the Asura realm. And so all these Asuras are there, and they're all like, "I'm the best. I'm the best. I'm gonna, you know." And then this Deva, he goes, he takes the form of an old Ashura, like who's, you know, doesn't have a lot or whatever. And they're all before this like princess or whatever, and she picks him, right? Because
Mm.
of their karmic connection or whatever. And then he reveals himself as who he is. He's Sakura.
Yeah.
The main Deva, right? And oh man, they get so mad. There's like a car chase and everything. No kidding. It's awesome. The stories are just fantastic. I love it. So yeah, like so the Devas and the Asuras are closely related. And they sometimes get along. They're not all like there's times where they're working together.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe they feel a little bit of empathy for one another's struggles.
Maybe. You know, have you ever seen, you know, the wheel of life? What do they call it?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, you know the one I'm talking. I don't know what the something chakra. Anyway, so the big wheel. What's interesting is if you look at the Asura realm, the tree that's growing in their realm has its roots in their realm, but the fruiting branches
It
are
goes
in the
up.
Deva realm. And it,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, it made me think of like the relationship between like upper management and the stockholders of a company, you know, something like that, right? Like, oh, we're doing all this work and, you know, like we're toiling after this, trying to take care of nurturing this tree, and all of the fruits are going somewhere else.
Yep,
We
yep.
never get to enjoy them.
Yep, we gotta just yeah, okay, there it goes. There it goes. All right. I accept.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the Asuras are fun. I really enjoyed learning about them.
Me too. Yeah, and it helped me see like my kind of aggression towards others. My paranoia, man, can be bad.
Yeah.
And yeah, I wanna be content. And I know that we can be. So we just gotta keep practicing, keep going.
Yep, yep, yep. Yeah, do a lot more Lojong
Yeah, hell
and the
yeah.
mind training. Shine the light on it.
Yes.
Well, I
All
wish you
right.
great contentment in the coming weeks,
Thank
and
you.
I hope that we both rise into the Deva realm next Tuesday.
No. We
Only on
will.
an
No.
exploratory mission, Jack.
Okay, there we go. I like that one. We'll go on an exploratory mission and we won't get sucked into
No,
all of
no,
the
no.
immense
No,
pleasures.
we'll just hang out there for a few kalpas.
We gotta practice the Dharma.
Oh, right. Yes. Thank
Yeah.
you. See, if we get there, if I ever end up in the Deva realm, I expect you to come grab me.
Okay, I'll help you out. I'll try.
Okay. Thank you so much, Jack.
Just don't think that I'm like a sure or something trying to drag you down.
It's okay. Take whatever form you need to pull me out, okay?
Okay. All right, friends. It's
Thank you,
been
Jack.
fun. We'll see you
Yeah.
next
Bye,
week.
everybody.